Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Scary Time, the podcast that helps you find new, emerging, and undiscovered scary and paranormal podcasts. I'm Greg, the host and curator of Scary Time. Today's episode is from Nopeville. Nopeville is the city filled with all the terrifying and horrible things that make you say nope. Join our tour guides, Jen and Christine, as they take you on an all-inclusive tour through the city of your nightmares. If you like today's episode, make sure to check out the episode description for links to subscribe. All right, let's get this show started.
Begin.
Down this road is a small city once thriving and full of life, but now desolate and abandoned. Well, abandoned save for the horrors rumored to reside within, which I presume is why you're here. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little morbid curiosity, but please, remember to stay close to your guides. We wouldn't want anyone to get left behind now.
Hello! Welcome back to Nopeville.
Such enthusiasm.
This is our nice, beautiful little city filled with all the terrors that make you say nope.
Nope.
And today's not going to be any different because we just keep bringing the nopes to you.
Always. Forever.
Always. As long as you're here, we will bring you nope.
Yep. There will always
You're
be tours
welcome.
because humankind is always afraid of something.
Yes. And it can be literally anything, like, I don't know, clowns maybe.
That sounds
Throwback. A little bit. Let's not go over there. So, I'm your tour guide, Jen.
familiar. I'm tour guide Christine.
And we're going to start off with a 5-star review. So this is on Apple Podcasts. If you would like your review read, go ahead and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or anywhere that allows you to leave reviews. We will find it and we will read it.
Yep. We're always notified. Thanks, corporate.
All right. So this is a 5-star review from Shocked and Applaud Podcast. I love Shocked and Applaud Podcast. They're an amazing podcast. You should check them out. But anyway, big zombie fan here. Christine and Jen did an awesome job covering this topic, and now I'm hooked. Delightfully detailed, really nice rapport. These gals know how to jump out from their notes and add that special sauce so lacking in other edutainment pods. Subscriber for life.
Aw, yay.
Thanks, guys.
Happy to have you.
All right, so this tour, we're going to hop back in the portal. So make sure you take your Dramamine because it can get a little queasy.
And hopefully Murmur has been keeping up on them because he's been pretty radio silent recently.
Yeah, hopefully they're repaired from the last time we used them. But if not,
Good luck.
yeah. So first we're going to head off to what tour guide Christine is going to take us to.
Yeah. We'll be going to Weston, West Virginia.
Cool.
Way back when. Here we go. Now, I'll be honest, I had no idea this place was still up and running, though I guess I was still right in that it's not open for the original purpose it was built for these days. Welcome to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum of Weston, West Virginia.
Yay.
One of the most infamous haunted locations in the United States.
Oh, for sure. Definitely on the bucket list for us.
Oh yeah, especially since they've got actual tours that you're allowed to go on, and you don't have to like break in.
Yeah.
Not that we would do that.
Of course not. We're good girls.
You try to be.
We'll just portal into it.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to break into anywhere. You're welcome. So the official website actually has the most beautifully succinct description of its history, so let me go ahead and just read that for you here on this plaque. It's,
all right.
quote, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, constructed between 1858 and 1881, is the largest hand-cut stone masonry building in North America, and is purportedly the second largest in the world next to the Kremlin.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So you have the Kremlin, and then you have the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Yep, they're both
Okay.
up there.
All right.
It was designed by the renowned architect Richard Andrews following the Kirkbride plan, which called for long rambling wings arranged in a staggered formation, assuring that each of the connecting structures received an abundance of therapeutic sunlight and fresh air.
Okay, sounds nice.
The original hospital, designed to house 250 souls, was opened to patients in 1864 and reached its peak in the 1950s with 2,400 patients. In overcrowded and generally poor conditions. Changes in the treatment of mental illness and the physical deterioration of the facility forced its closure in 1994, inflicting a devastating effect on the local economy from which it has yet to recover, end quote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, apparently boasting the hauntingly impressive size of 666 acres, with 13 buildings sprawling across the land, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum first opened its doors to patients in 1864 and did not close them again until 1994, as stated above, so about 130 years.
Damn.
While construction of the asylum did begin in late 1858, started by prison and slave laborers, but later handed over to skilled stonemasons from Europe, progress was interrupted by the Civil War in 1861. Damn those wars.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's right around the Civil War.
Yep. Temporarily, the grounds and whatever structures had been started became known as Camp Tyler for Union soldiers and were used as barracks and a stable until Confederates raided in 1862 and 63. In 1864, Confederate raiders came through what was then called the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane and stripped it of all food and clothing that was obviously intended for the first patients entering the hospital.
Seriously?
Yep. Because what are they going to do about it?
Yeah, they're just helpless little people.
Yeah. The very first patient admitted to the hospital, according to the first logbook used at the hospital, was a housewife committed for, quote, domestic trouble.
Hysteria?
No, it was literally listed as domestic trouble. She's a menace. As many of us already know, if someone didn't like you back in these days, they could come up with any reason to have you committed, from masturbation to religious enthusiasm, and even novel reading.
Don't be too enthusiastic about Jesus.
Or whatever you happen to believe in. Other ridiculous commitment reasons included congestion of the brain, feebleness of intellect, seduction, laziness, menopause, superstition, and tuberculosis.
Okay, I would have been admitted like 5 times.
This facility was originally made to house a small number of patients, as I mentioned before, and was intended to be fairly self-sufficient with vegetable farms, a dairy herd, and ice plant.
Yeah.
The ideal in these days was that institutions not only be self-sustaining, but that patients learn a trade. Thus, patients' clothes, curtains, fabrics, mattresses, and even most furniture were made at the asylum. While doors opened in 1864, construction did not actually finish until 1881, and still more buildings were built well into 1890 with the addition of the Women's Auxiliary Building. The asylum's name changed to the Weston State Hospital in 1913. Early into the 20th century, the asylum became plagued with the issue of overcrowding, with new buildings filling as quickly as they were built and money becoming incredibly tight, as they were already over budget with construction costs when they'd thought they'd finished in 1881.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were well over budget. So, of course, when overcrowding happens in a place where people have simply been abandoned anyway, conditions start to suffer for the patients, and the staff stop caring about treating to rehabilitate, and instead turn to treatments that will make patients more manageable.
Yep, just more for control than for rehab.
By 1938, the asylum was said to be home to 1,661 patients, among which were epileptics, alcoholics, drug addicts, and, quote, non-educable mental defectives, end quote.
Okay.
Yep. Treatment of patients in the 19th century were already horrific at best, with bloodletting and insulin comas being used to help heal the sick.
Insulin comas? That's just cruel.
I know. And seclusion cells and confinement cribs being used to control the more violent patients. Surprisingly, though, treatments would in fact get worse for patients by the 1950s due to staff simply not being able to handle the 2,400 patients being housed in the asylum by this time, nearly 10 times more than it was built to handle in the first place. Patients that might complain or try to act out would often be put into a sort of solitary confinement, being chained to a wall in an empty room for months, allegedly.
Months?
Yeah. The treatment methods that became popular at this time were ice water baths, seclusion cells, electroshock therapy, and lobotomies, with the most popular being the transorbital lobotomy, or, quote, ice pick lobotomy.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah. Between 1948 and 1952, Dr. Walter Freeman performed 787 lobotomies, 225 of which were completed in a near 2-week period alone.
202 weeks?
Yep, he could just whip them out in 10 minutes. They were in and out in like an assembly line fashion. Yep.
God.
However, the biggest threat to patients remained other patients, thanks to the overcrowding, and violence began to run rampant, with patients murdering other patients and even some staff.
Yeah.
So many would also commit suicide, female staff were raped, and the asylum just became more and more dangerous as time went on. So there were stories of some people that would get murdered and hidden under stairs, and they wouldn't be found for a long time until they stunk. But a lot of these people were covered in shit, so they barely smelled it anyway.
That's what I was going to say, with the excrement and urine ammonia smell that, workers don't clean up. It'd be really easy to mask a dead body.
Mm-hmm. So you just got to stumble upon it one day, literally.
Yeah.
The Charleston Gazette exposed the horrific conditions of the asylum on 3 separate occasions before it was finally shut down in 1994. So it took them 3 times of being like, hey, so patients are really suffering here, before it finally shut down.
Wow.
The sprawling property sat abandoned until it was auctioned off to Joe Jordan in 2007 for $1.5 million.
That's actually not too bad for 13 buildings. Was 13 buildings?
13 buildings, yeah.
Yeah. And 600 acres.
666. Don't forget the 66.
Oh, okay. Wait.
You didn't hit it until just now?
It just dawned on me that it's 666 acres and 13 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, you're funny.
That's just those whoosh right over my head.
Clearly. I was wondering why you didn't react earlier. I was like...
I'm slow.
Over 2,000 people are buried in the cemetery on the grounds, and there are a number of specters said to reliably haunt the buildings to this day, including Civil War era ghosts, children, patients, and staff. In Season 4 of Ghost Hunters, back in April of 2008, TAPS go in for their investigation of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
They comment on hearing things like footsteps or quiet voices, or seeing lights passing places, but always further away when they go to investigate, or no reason for the sound. Eventually, Jay and Grant pick up what sounds like a man yelling far away or in an indistinct voice a couple of times in the Civil War building.
Mm-hmm.
As they continue, they also pick up what might have been a little kid's or woman's voice or laugh, and Jay comments that it was between them.
Ew.
Yeah. Jay was like on his way into a room, and Grant was bringing up the rear, and they both heard this laugh, but Grant heard it in front of him, and Jay heard it from right behind him, so it was like right in between them.
That's creepy. You're just like,
right.
You can't see this entity, and it's just there laughing at
and
you
you're just
because it knows you can't see it. Yeah. Or it's just messing with you because it knows you can't see it. So it's just like, I'm right here.
That's entirely possible, because it does seem like the hauntings at this place are incredibly intelligent. Especially like
with you.
By now. Yeah. Steve and Tango hear movement and a woman's laughter in the female ward, and when Tango leaves to see if laughter could carry into the building, which is funny because he just stands outside and is like, ha ha ha. Steve starts to hear enough walking around that he starts to think someone else is in there, but no one's there.
Oh, but didn't hear Tango outside?
Nope, he couldn't hear Tango's laughter. So the laughter they heard obviously came from the room.
Wow, that's creepy.
Yeah. As Jay and Grant are walking around, Jay sees a black shadow by the kitchen, and when they go to investigate, they hear a loud bang, which gets picked up on the camera.
Oh.
Chris and Kristen, they brought a couple of different people with them that were like brand new people. Chris was one of them. Chris and Kristen investigate the Civil War building, and Kristen sees a black mass in another room that she says was like a shapeless blob. So Jay and Grant were like, we should send them in here now that we've gotten some evidence. And so that's what happened. I will say that it's kind of unfortunate that it seemed like about 75% of the things they were seeing and hearing were not really caught on camera audio or video.
I hate that.
Yeah, during the time that you're watching them all go through the actual building, which is the most fun to see it. So they're like react to something and you're like, oh yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
But although some of that is because of the damn music and audio that is added in to create tension, which I fucking hate.
Oh, yeah. It happens in like all the ghost shows.
Yeah, but I don't know, in this particular episode, for me, it felt like it was masking it. And I'm like, I don't hear these footsteps and stuff that you guys are hearing. But I hear the whoa. That's supposed to make it dramatic. Yeah. While they're going back over the evidence, I am able to hear the woman's laughter that Steve and Tango had picked up.
Ooh.
And some of the noises that they'd claimed to hear. So like the kind of like shufflings and stuff like that they said they heard. Because they had been talking and suddenly they were like, wow, it's like a flurry of noise just happening all of a sudden. Like, I heard the swish of your jacket.
That's very paranormal.
In their analysis of the digital recorders from the night, one picks up the sound of like a door closing when no one was around. So they pull up the video of that and you don't see any doors closing in the room. And there was also no sound before or after the sound.
Okay.
So nobody was in the room or anything. It just kind of picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a second recorder that was left on its own, they got something that actually chilled me. It was a very clear, loud exhale of breath.
Oh.
Again, amidst no other sound. It's just nothing. There's just like...
That means they're super close to you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or close to the recorder because they understand because there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Taps does come to the conclusion that this asylum is indeed haunted, and the owner is thrilled by all of the evidence they present to her.
Yeah, because now they can start having paid tours.
Monetizing it.
Yep.
Back in season 3 of Ghost Adventures on October 30th, 2009, so their Halloween special, our baby ghost hunters, Zach, Nick, and Aaron, did a 7-hour live investigation of this asylum.
Wow.
I managed to find a condensed version of it, so I'm hoping it had all been condensed of just the evidence they obtained, and I just lost all the bullshit. I don't know.
Oh, the bro, did you see that?
Bro. Well, they also had like this announcer dude that was like explaining what's going on. I'm like, what do you think is happening? Oh, here's what I think is happening, Bob. It was like paranormal football.
Yeah, because it was live, like you said, so they need to make
fill the
have more
silence.
engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. They mentioned hearing a woman moan or cry out, but I didn't hear it. But they did get some random noises like stones being thrown, so it was almost like somebody was kicking rocks at them or something. They also start getting little EMF spikes up to about 2 when Zach asks anyone present to touch it.
Okay.
But then after a moment, it starts to go up to around 15.
Ooh.
So of course they freak out. Dude, look at my head! Soon after, they bust out the spirit box, and they pick up a voice that says hello. And then they start picking up some other kind of random sounds that the investigator with them asks if they're sounds from when the asylum was running. So they brought in some other guy with them.
Okay.
They do get a response to this that they claim sounds like, yes, they were, but I couldn't make it out myself. Though I may have at least heard a garbled yes.
Okay.
Next, they ask how many of them are in the hallway, and after a moment, they get just one as a response very clearly.
Okay.
But there were like 5 or 6 of them, so maybe the ghost was referring to themselves. I don't know.
Well, if it's just one, that's not too bad.
Yeah. Maybe. Zach then asks, quote, Ruthie, do you even want to show yourself to us? End quote. Ruthie was apparently a violent patient in the hospital said to haunt the area they were doing the session in, and who seems to hate men, so of course Zach wants her to play. After a moment, a clear no comes back in response. All of these responses coming through in a male voice, by the way.
Oh, so it's not Ruthie.
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's not funny anymore.
Zach, of course, eventually asks what the spirits want to do to him, to which the response is harm. Fairly clear. Yeah, because he always has to, what do you want to do to me?
Yeah.
Huh?
What kind of answer are you expecting? Like,
I know. Well,
what are you
because he
looking
likes
for?
to hear them say harm. Especially back then. He was a lot more, I mean, he's still provocative now, but
yeah.
he doesn't do the, what do you want to do to me?
Yeah. Probably because he's been, like, harmed way too many times. And also harmed the people around him.
No, but now he just barks commands at them like, scratch me! They seem to stop getting responses for a bit and comment on that when a female voice comes through and clearly says, I am.
Okay.
So they're saying, they're not talking to us anymore, they're not responding, and then you get, I am. Again, Zach tries to provoke and asks what the spirits will do if they stay in the building, and a terse nothing comes through in the female voice, which he seems to love. They again stop getting responses to their questions for a bit, so Zach says, say something, and 2 male voices come back with, I don't have to, and then a strong no.
And I'm like, oh, fuck you.
When the visiting investigator explains the 2 distinct voices, one response with, you got it, comes through.
How nice.
Zach asks, do you like Aaron? And the male voice responds after some time, never.
Okay.
Next, they move on to doing EVP sessions with the Constantinos, and they pick up a clear whisper, get out, from a male voice while trying to contact the spirit of a little girl, which Zach and Nick, and I think Debbie as well, claimed to hear, but again, wasn't picked up.
Oh.
Zach immediately starts challenging this male spirit, and again, they all claim to hear a male voice somewhere, but still nothing picked up on the cameras. They hear a door slam, and then Nick hears a man's voice when they go to figure out where that happened. This, I think, did get picked up. In another EVP session, they hear, "Why don't you leave?" And while recording it, they hear voices of women talking. Aaron sees a shadow run by and then loud running in the hallway.
Oh.
In this live investigation, they invite 3 fans in as trigger objects.
Oh, fun.
And Zach proceeds to do what he likes to do and locks each one of them in a seclusion cell with cameras and digital recorders.
Do they sign a waiver?
Probably. I feel like if you do anything with Zach, you have to sign a waiver.
Yeah.
You have to go into his museum.
Yeah.
Zach then provokes anything in the area to show themselves and informs the spirits that they can go into the cells and do whatever they want with the people locked in them.
Is that part of the waiver?
Which one girl has like a what the fuck?
Yeah.
Sort of response to it.
It's like, I did not read this in the contract.
Yeah. The cameras finally pick up one of the vocal things everyone is hearing, and it happens to be a long woman's scream.
Oh.
They later catch a clear glowing orb in photo down a hallway, and then another mist-like orb that Zach had seen reaching out to grab Nick's leg. They also pick up on the smell of sulfur at some point.
Uh-oh. That's not good.
Yeah. They had brought in some strange tank-like contraption that emits an alarm when energy levels spike around it, and when turned on, it provides spirits with energy, sort of like a combination of those money grab tanks and the electricity orbs you used to see in places.
Okay.
You could put your finger on and it would follow. In another EVP session, they are talking about the inhumane medical practices performed there, and a voice is captured whispering, "It worked."
Was it a doctor?
Aaron also starts to feel a pain in his eye, which everyone equates with the ice pick lobotomies, so Zach turns him into bait and has him do the talking for the next EVP session. And when Aaron asks if the spirit is a doctor shoving an ice pick into his eye, they pick up, "I did."
Well, see, that's who answered original. The doctor is the only one that thinks it's going to work.
Yep. Per the voting results of the viewing public, Nick is next sent into the morgue.
Of course.
To do solo EVP, where he is locked into a cabinet. He's left alone for 30 minutes and starts to feel cold, but I don't think he managed to pick up anything on his digital recorder because nothing was shown.
Okay.
And that was the end of the Ghost Adventures evidence. So kind of similar with Ghost Hunters, where they were hearing a lot of things that I didn't hear in the video. Paranormal Lockdown makes their way into this massive asylum to investigate in 2016 in their first episode of their first season.
Nice.
So Nick decided he wanted to go back.
Yeah.
So they spent 72 hours inside investigating.
Okay.
Upon walking into the building with the owner, Nick comments that he'd seen a figure standing in a doorway, and they decided to do a quick EVP session. Nick asks the spirit if it's the one he saw, and the recorder picks up a quiet yes. But when Katrina asks if it knows that it's dead, the response is a louder no.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. They bring in a brand new fancy spirit box type device called a geobox.
Okay.
That was made just for them, and while Nick is setting it up, through the static they get a clear, "Nick."
They remember you.
They're like, "Hey, you're back?
You've been here before.
Hey, what's up, dude?"
I know you.
When Katrina asks if someone was murdered in the room they're in, which they'd learned earlier that a pair of men had murdered another patient, a response comes through that says, "Come with us."
No. Nope.
They next decide to check out the area where Nick had previously seen a shadow figure while investigating with Ghost Adventures in 2009, and they pick up a disembodied shh, which you do hear.
You guys are too loud. Stop asking questions.
Guys, why are you here? It's daytime. We're supposed to be sleeping.
God.
In an EVP session alone, Nick asks if the spirits are scared walking around alone in the dark like he is, and he receives a response, "Yep."
Oh.
Yeah.
That's scary, like when you think what spirits are scared of.
Right? Katrina and Nick separate to get some sleep while the cameraman leaves the building to get some actual sleep.
Do they sleep in the building?
Yep. The cameraman doesn't, though.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. And Nick's camera picks up a loud bang out of nowhere.
How do you sleep?
Which startles him out of his damn cot. And I actually think he was sleeping in the hallway where he'd seen the shadow figure, too.
Why?
Because it's Nick.
Yeah, he's been prepped and trained by Zach to do all sorts of weird shit.
Exactly. In a brief EVP session the next day, Katrina asks what game the spirits would like to play, to which she gets a response that they say sounds like "shut up, bitch," but it wasn't super clear to me what it said.
Aw, poor Katrina. I just want to play a game.
Shut up, bitch. I don't want to play with you. I want to play with Nick. When it gets dark again, they bust out the geobox, and Nick says he hears a woman say hello again, which I don't hear.
Okay.
But next they get a clearly male voice that says, "Don't say a word," in response to Katrina asking if they want to talk. They comment about how this seems like the male spirit is telling the female not to talk to them. So Katrina says, "You can talk to us. You don't have to listen to him." And they get that same male voice saying no in response.
Sassy.
Yeah. Katrina then asks why she isn't allowed to talk to them, and the male voice responds, "I'm telling you." Which, no, you're not.
Yeah. You're just saying don't do it.
Yeah. So Katrina makes the offer that if they can say her name, then she'll stop asking her to talk, and it does in fact say her name.
Oh shit.
So, keeping their promise, they leave the area and head to the morgue.
All right.
Because that's the best place to go. Where Katrina starts feeling chest pains like being stabbed with a needle and then a pain in her head.
Oh, like a lobotomy.
I think Nick commented on that.
I hate it. Why is everybody getting lobotomies?
So then Nick challenges her to spend the night in the morgue on the slab like he had, even though he was only there for 30 minutes. But she doesn't get locked in like he did, so she could leave at any time.
I'm not getting in one of those cubbies.
No, fuck
ever.
that.
Fuck no.
First of all, it's filthy.
Yeah.
And second of all, dead bodies.
Like, hope you got your fucking tetanus shot.
Right. While she's in the slab musing to herself about death, because what else are you going to think about while you're laying on a morgue slab?
How much I want to get out of there.
She suddenly stops talking, and you can hear clear thumping footsteps on the camera positioned outside facing her location. So it's like somebody very big and barefoot is walking around.
Is watching her too.
She then asks whatever might be there to bang on a wall of her confinement. And not long after, you hear like metal rattling sounds. And then a louder tap on metal.
Like it's in the cubby next to her?
Something like that, or like very close. Yeah.
I don't like it.
Nick decides to spend the night in the basement, and as he was making his way to where he was planning to sleep, he says he was hearing all kinds of noises, which he didn't have his camera rolling, so he doesn't pick any of it up. As he sits on his sleeping bag, his camera picks up like footsteps shuffling through the debris. So it's like somebody's dragging their feet.
Yeah.
The next day, Nick brings in Adam and Amy from Kindred Spirits on the third and final day of investigating, since they had also seen a shadow figure before. They pick up another shh while they're all chatting about experiences.
Don't tell anybody.
Because somebody there just really wants to sleep. While Nick describes to everyone where and how he slept on the first night, which was the hallway he'd seen the shadow figure in, Adam decides he wants to experience what Nick had experienced, so they leave him alone there. And they all kind of take like playful bets about how long he's going to stay. He also picks up on feelings of someone creeping up on him the entire time he is there, and so the group listens to the digital recorder they'd left with him, and the first thing picked up is, "Hello, Adam."
That's creepy. Like when they're intelligent enough to know the names of the investigators.
And they're like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Hey, what's up?
So toward the end of the episode, I saw one of the absolute creepiest things I have ever seen in any of these ghost shows, no joke. Like, bad enough that I had to send a clip of it to tour guide Jen. I couldn't keep it.
Oh, yeah.
The camera guy is the only one who sees this thing in the moment because the area is pitch black, but it is literally like a pale humanoid thing slowly crawling across the floor at the far end of the hallway.
It just looks like somebody just crawling, slithering across the floor.
Yeah. And that horrifying visual evidence was the last bit they managed to get in their 3-day stay at the asylum. In 2019, also in their first season, Portals to Hell make their way to West Virginia to see what evidence they can uncover.
Okay.
Katrina is a part of this show.
Oh.
So, Katrina returns with her partner of this show, Jack, and interestingly, one of the people they interview for experiences describes a blobby crawly thing that had been seen that reminded me of that awful thing that the cameraman for Paranormal Lockdown captured.
Yeah.
Which, weirdly, Katrina doesn't comment on that sounding like something she'd seen before. Like, she doesn't act like she's been there before.
Yeah, which is weird, because I have seen episodes like that with, I've seen episodes of Kindred Spirits with Adam and Amy, and they'll go to a place where I know for sure they've been with ghost hunters, but then they'll act like they've never been there before. So I wonder if it's like some contract thing.
Yeah, she doesn't make any comment whatsoever about ever having been there or having seen something like that, which is, I guess that makes sense if it's a
pretty
contract
traumatizing to see
that
little thing.
Dude, highly recommend watching that episode, guys. The person they're interviewing had mentioned that she could only describe it as a sort of tentacle-looking thing, which called to mind how the cameraman had perceived this thing as looking almost like a very large snake in Paranormal Lockdown. When the sun goes down, they bring in their psychic medium, who calls herself the Psychic Bloodhound, I think.
Oh, okay.
And she arrives blindfolded, so she has no idea what or where she's walking into, which I found interesting because that's a good way to keep the look of the place from influencing impressions.
Yeah, I always think about that too. Like, why don't you guys just go in blind?
Yeah.
And then you can corroborate with what you find with actual evidence or with the actual stories.
Right, because when you walk into this giant building that's you're told is an asylum, you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm picking up on the pain and torment of patients that were here before.
Mm-hmm.
They keep her blindfolded as they walk through to key locations for her impressions. So the entire time she's giving her impressions, she's blindfolded.
Okay.
But when she first comes into the building, they ask her how she's feeling about the place, and she mentions the impression of a brooding stone face behind a gate. First, they take her to the area where the owner had mentioned a woman had committed suicide and ask her to see if she can point out the room. So, of course, they don't tell her why she's there, but they say that the owner is interested in finding out where a certain location is. Mm-hmm. She mentions that they're on the right floor and that she's seeing a room that's somewhere between light blue and light green that's calling for her attention. Then she motions in a direction where she says she's feeling drawn.
Okay.
Katrina says that there is a room there, and they walk her in, and she says that the room feels like the right room and just so happens to have peeling light green wallpaper.
Ooh.
And of course, Jack and Katrina do nothing to react to anything that she says, so they don't influence her. Mm-hmm. Or they look at the camera making faces and mouthing things, but that's about it, yeah. Next, they bring her to the room where the patient was murdered by two other patients to see what impressions she can get. Mm-hmm. She first gets a sense of someone she says is timid or mute, but could be violent, and remarks that she's not sure if their legs don't work or if they just like to crawl around on the floor.
Oh, crawling.
In another part of the room, she feels a sort of pressure and like something is hanging in that part of the room. So the owner had earlier described the murder as these two violent patients tying a sheet around this much more mentally challenged patient's neck and hanging him from a pipe until he'd black out, then lower him down and repeat until they realized they were going to get in trouble.
Well, yeah.
So their solution was to have one guy hold this poor patient on the floor while the other positions a bedpost onto his head and proceeds to jump on the bed until the post goes through the man's head.
Okay, so their solution to torturing this guy is to kill him?
Yeah, they don't want to get in trouble, so they murder him and get in trouble anyway. Yeah. In Paranormal Lockdown, they had brought in a woman that used to work at the asylum, I think, and she got a very emotional reaction to being there, and she mentioned that just earlier the day that the one patient had died, he had spent the whole day just coloring. I know. It was heartbreaking. The show's associate producer actually located an article on the murder which gives them the names of the individuals involved. David Mason and James Wood had murdered Dean Matheny. Mm-hmm. They then take the medium to the 4th floor, which is where the creepy crawly was seen in Paranormal Lockdown, where the tour guide had experiences with a blobby mass, where Nick had seen his shadow figure with ghost adventures, and where other stories of being scratched and touched had happened.
Okay.
When Michelle, the medium, arrives, she mentions that there is a very imposing presence there that is intelligent and reacting to her. She then creepily moves up on Katrina as she's describing what the entity is, giving the impression that it will do if it's aware of you and wants you to know it's there. As she approaches Katrina, she says, quote, "If it thinks you should know that it's here, first it will see you and it will get closer. And if you don't pay attention to it," and she then brings her hand up to Katrina's face like she's going to grab her. I think it will start to be physically in the sense of putting hands on you, possibly a heaviness. That heaviness, end quote.
So it's just I'm here, pay attention to me.
Yeah, if it's giving you signs that you're there and you would continue to ignore it, it'll start to get physical with you. She mentions that on that floor, there is also a sense that people will go up there with the intent of scaring themselves, and that the things that are there are intelligent enough to react to that and intentionally scare people. Like attracts like, she says.
It's like when you go to Halloween horror nights and they're attracted to the people who are visibly scared.
Yep. You're like a beacon. After Michelle leaves, Katrina and Jack split up on the 4th floor, and it's not long before Katrina and her cameraman hear distant voices that do get picked up. Jack's brand new 3D mapping camera was having technical difficulties, and Katrina's phone dies and boots up as though it were corrupted. They put some toys in the room where the patient was murdered along with a REM pod, and as they try to coax the spirit of the murdered Dean, the devices start lighting up. They decide to have a question and answer session using the REM pod and get intelligent responses to questions like, did you die here? Do you like playing with us? Do you get to roam the whole building? They had set up the rules that every time the answer was yes, Dean had to blink the lights, and he blinked the lights to all of those questions. But when Katrina brings over a mask made by one of the murderers, the responses suddenly stop.
Why did she have that?
It was part of the museum. Yeah. As soon as she puts the mask away, the lights start blinking again.
So he was just really scared.
Scared of it, yeah. Katrina asks Dean to walk through the laser grid in the hallway, and the REM pod starts going off in another room, and then a heavy door closes somewhere behind them. So it had also been noted that in like different experiences and stuff that there is a big gym that likes to haunt this area.
Okay.
And James Moore was one of the murderers, and James Moore died somewhere after they'd been convicted. So they think that he has returned to torment Dean.
Poor Dean.
You know. Jack puts forth the idea to the owner the next day that because the building was built out of a lot of sandstone, which has a high likelihood of having a lot of quartz in it, that the building itself has held on to a lot of the energy from the events that happened within its walls back when it was still operating, which is called the stone tape theory, apparently.
Okay. I have heard that about limestone, that it's like a good conductor of spiritual energy.
Yeah, and I guess sandstone's right up there as well. So that was the end of their investigation. And finally, just last year in 2020, Destination Fear made their way to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and for their own investigation.
Okay.
So this show, if you don't know, plays itself off as being all about the scares and features Dakota Layden, who had apparently worked alongside Zach for a period of time, road tripping with his sister Chelsea, childhood best friend Tanner, and I think former cameraman Alex. They don't really explain who he is. Travel to the most haunted locations in America, where they then separate and spend the night.
Okay.
So this was the first episode I've ever seen of this show, but it seemed to me like one person in the group researches the location they will be traveling to and keeps it secret until they're on the way. And then the person will present the packet of information they've compiled on the location for everyone to read on the way.
Okay.
That just seems to be the premise.
Okay.
When they arrive, the group splits up 2 and 2, with Chelsea and Alex going into the main building and Dakota and Tanner going to the medical center. As Dakota and Tanner make their way back down the medical center from the top floor, so they go all the way up to the 4th floor, just kind of exploring, they're stopped on the 2nd floor by like a slam and the squeak of a door. As they make their way down the hall to investigate, Tanner catches a dark ball crossing the hall, almost like a ball being lobbed from one room to another, but they don't see it again and get no EVPs. So he was walking around with a thermal camera, so it was like this super dark purpley black shape. So it was very cold, whatever it was.
Interesting.
Tanner and Dakota then make their way to the 4th floor of the main building, and they're in the hallway I now recognize from Paranormal Lockdown and Portals to Hell. They call out asking if anything is there and to make its presence known, and are immediately met with loud knocking. We're brought back to see what Chelsea and Alex are up to, and while trying to communicate with Dean in the room he was murdered in, they get the word story on the Ovilus. What happens next is straight out of a horror movie, if it's real.
Okay.
Alex starts getting a call on his phone from Tanner, so he answers it on speaker to hear indistinct talking and static, almost like he may have pocket dialed them, but then it hangs up.
Okay.
Alex uses the walkie-talkie to ask about the call, and Tanner reveals that he doesn't even have his phone on him and that it's in the equipment room. Another call comes through while they're on the walkie-talkie, and this time a loud inhuman screech and squealing comes through the speaker before it hangs up as they tell Tanner and Dakota about the call.
What the fuck?
They all rush to see what's going on and find Tanner's phone right where he said he left it, and it's dead. And Tanner says he has a password and fingerprint to unlock it.
That's weird that they would bring their phones during investigation, though, because that can interfere with equipment.
Yeah, and when Alex's phone starts going off, he says something about like, oh, I guess I forgot that it's on super loud, because it scared the shit out of them. This whole thing is plenty creepy, but I can't say entirely buy that it really happened as it's portrayed.
Yeah.
Because I've literally never heard of something like that happening. Ever.
Yeah, they just wanted something different.
But maybe ghosts are learning.
Maybe, because you said that they were intelligent at Trans-Allegheny.
Yeah, so maybe they've figured out how to work smartphones. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like as it goes by from Ghost Hunters to Ghost Adventures to Paranormal Lockdown to these guys, like
yeah,
the ghosts are learning different things every time.
It's ramping up. The group of 4 split up to sleep in the 4 scariest locations in the asylum and draw which locations they'll be spending the night in. So they all randomly pick, and each one gets a location that they haven't been into yet.
Okay.
This is the second group I know of that has slept in this place. Could you spend the night in a location like this? I mean, we've obviously slept in haunted places before, but nothing like this one.
I wouldn't sleep.
I mean, they don't either, but would you spend the entire night there?
Sure.
Okay.
Not alone.
You wouldn't split up like everybody else.
No, you are not leaving my side. I wouldn't be alone, and I wouldn't sleep.
What if it's like Phasmophobia, where they're like only responds to people who are alone?
In Phasmophobia, I do not leave your side, even if it says it responds to one person. So I will model that game in real life. and never leave you. So
Tanner gets to the area where Dean was murdered and picks up the word Jim on the ovulus while trying to make contact. And that's all he gets that night. Chelsea ends up in the infamous 4th floor hallway where she hears clattering down the hall in one direction, and then in the opposite direction, almost immediately, her REM pod starts going off out of nowhere.
Uh-oh.
Alex ends up on the 2nd floor of the medical center where the dark orb had been caught and is startled off of his cot by a loud bang, which for some reason he goes down to the 1st floor to investigate and then is like, oh, I guess it's nothing, and goes to bed.
Okay.
Like, boy, it was on your floor or
Yeah.
above you. And apparently Dakota got nothing because they didn't even touch base with him. And that concludes the evidence caught by the various paranormal investigator teams that make up their living doing this kind of thing. All right, and that is it for this particular asylum, so let's go ahead and step back through the portal for a moment. All right, and now tour guide Jen's going to take us somewhere.
All right. So as you can see, we're in Pennsylvania.
All right.
And right before you is the Pennhurst State School and Hospital.
Nice.
Yup. Isn't it lovely?
Very.
So the Pennhurst State School and Hospital was constructed between 1903 and 1908 in Spring City, Pennsylvania. It was originally named the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic.
Nice.
But that doesn't roll off the tongue as well, so
Nope.
they changed it.
Not really.
So I will quote a 1954 brochure I found about the school to try to sell you on what it was supposed to do before I get into what they actually did.
Oh, amazing.
Yep.
Sell me.
I will. You'll love it. So, quote, "It is a state-owned and state-supported institution devoted to the study, care, treatment, education, and a vocational training of mentally retarded or defective boys and girls. The institution is simultaneously a hospital, a school, and in many respects, an almost completely self-operating community." End quote.
Very nice.
Doesn't that sound lovely?
Mm-hmm. Sounds like exactly where I want to spend the rest of my life.
By the time the institution was completely built, the 1,400-acre campus it was built upon had over 20 buildings, and their uses range from dormitories for the patients, schools, barbershops, shoe shops, gymnasiums, housing for the staff, a hospital, a playground, a recreational field, an auditorium, among others.
Wow.
That's not even everything it had.
Sound like quite a place.
It was like its own little town, yeah.
Yeah, even the Trans-Allegheny, it was like everything they added, it was like, okay, now we got the black section. Now we've got the women section. Now we've got the violent people section. Now we've got a medical ward. It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
No, they really try to set this up like it was its own self-sustaining community where the people who were admitted never had to leave.
Right. I mean, they succeeded.
The campus had its own farm where the majority of the food provided to the patients came from, and they provided worshiping services for Protestant, Jewish, and Catholic patients.
Oh, that's nice.
Many of the patients were provided jobs while they lived at Pennhurst. These jobs range from helping the housekeeping staff clean other patients and other janitorial duties to working in the barber/beauty shops. Patients could learn technical skills and assist the construction and maintenance engineer with any repairs around the grounds like ventilation, refrigeration, television, and radio repair.
I mean, that all sounds amazing in theory.
On paper, yes.
Yeah, like, that sounds like a great thing that should exist. But
yeah,
it's not what happens.
I'm painting you a picture.
I know.
There were patients that would help with laundry, work on the farm, work in the tailor shop or shoe shop. All of these programs would help the patients learn basic skills and provide daily activities for them as well. So kind of like in Trans-Allegheny where they would learn a skill. So when they were released to the public, they actually, had some worth.
Right, exactly.
When the institution first opened, it was able to house 1,800 people. It was not only meant to protect the people who were unable to protect themselves, but to protect society from these people as well. However, within the first 4 years of opening its doors, they were already overcrowded.
Oh, fabulous.
It was essentially a place where people would place other undesirable people like criminals, orphans, and immigrants among those mentally disabled. So pretty much if they didn't like you, here.
Yeah, just
drop you off at the front gates of Pennhurst.
Yep, just like Trans-Allegheny.
Eugenics, to quote the Oxford Dictionary, is a study of how to arrange the reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable.
Yeah.
In other words, artificial selection in order to build the ultimate and superior human race.
Yeah.
So, institutions like these were built in order to segregate the mentally disabled from the general population in order to prevent them from breeding and passing on their genetic disabilities. Yep. Pennhurst chief position in 1918 quoted leading eugenicist Dr. Henry H. Goddard while lobbying to expand Pennhurst campus to include a specific female institution, stating, you're going to love this.
Oh, boy.
It's a long quote. Every feeble-minded person is a potential criminal. The general public, although more convinced today than ever before that it is a good thing to segregate the idiot or the distinct imbecile, they have not as yet been convinced as to the proper treatment of the defective delinquent. It is now generally understood that feeble-mindedness is the great majority of instances the direct result of hereditary transmission of mental defect. End quote. Then he goes on to say that if the state isn't prepared... There's more.
He has more to say.
There's more.
Somebody shut him up.
Then he goes on to say that if the state isn't prepared to care for all feeble-minded individuals, then they should at least have preferential treatment and institutional care for females, since feeble-minded females are the ones that bear the children and pass on their defect. He says, quote, the feeble-minded girl is more of a menace to society than the feeble-minded boy. Statistics show that feeble-minded girls and boys marry in the 3-to-1 ratio. End quote.
Okay. He's just making up statistics.
Yeah. So there's more to this.
I believe it.
And that's all I'm going to tell you. But essentially, that was his lobbying to create a female ward to separate the females from the boys, because if you can't care for everybody, then you might as well treat the women, because the women are the problem.
Of course, because women are always the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with this popular thought in mind, if a parent happened to give birth to an individual with disabilities, it was recommended that they take them to an institution for both their own good and the good of the child. They were supposed to receive proper care and treatment for their ailments, but in the end, these patients were often looked at and treated as less than human.
Of course, as they still do.
But like I said, not everyone was someone with a disability. Sometimes the state would drop off criminals instead of overcrowding the jails, or the criminals would fake a disability to get out of jail.
Oh my God.
Yep. Family members would just drop off their children if they no longer wanted them or could care for them. And sometimes young women who got pregnant were thrown in the institution since unwedded pregnant women had nowhere else to go. So it's a hodgepodge of people.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the institution started with good intentions, like I've told you.
Right, like I agreed with.
Yeah. But over time, with overcrowding and minimal staff, Pennhurst's original mission failed and ended up being more dangerous for people to be within its walls than outside of them.
Of course.
Yep. In a 1968 expose by a young reporter named Bill Baldini, the horrors contained within the walls of Pennhurst were finally revealed to the public, which ultimately led to Pennhurst's downfall. In the 5-part expose, Bill Baldini is given access to Pennhurst, where he captures on video the nightmares within. You see patients sitting on the floor naked. There's 50 to 60 patients per ward with only 2 staff members to take care of them. There's flies swarming the patients that are tied to their beds with fly paper hanging above them, and they're just filled with dead flies.
Oh, that just, look, again, phasmophobia.
Patients were seen banging their heads against the walls, sitting in their own excrement, and screaming and howling to no end. There were children from 5 months to 5 to 6 years old inside cribs that looked more like cages. The older children never learned to walk, and when asked why, it was simply because they didn't have enough staff to put mattresses on the floor in order to teach them how to crawl and eventually walk.
Oh my God.
So these children were emaciated and essentially just left to rot inside their cribs since it was easier to handle them that way.
I wonder if that's where the Charleston Gazette failed, is that they didn't have video of this shit. They just had pictures.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Maybe.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the horrors.
Yeah, you're going to love this guy. There's a doctor that was interviewed whose literal name is Dr. Fear. That is literally his name. And Bill Baldini asked him what he does to handle patients with behavior problems. He answered that if they had a patient with a higher mental capacity that was acting out, they would lock that individual in a cottage with patients of lower grade mental capacity to degrade them to a certain extent and offend their dignity. He said that their peers would make fun of them for it, and he also said he didn't see anything inhumane about it.
You know, when you're born for a job, you're born for a job, man.
Yeah.
When you have a last name like Fear.
I was like, that's literally your name? Did you change it? Like, what the fuck?
Sounds like it, but who knows?
Other ways they would calm patients would be with drugs. More often than not, psychotropic drugs were used at Pennhurst for control, not for treatment. He then describes a time when one patient hit another one of his patients over the head, causing a welt. He threatened the patient, saying, if you do that again, I'm going to do something to you. The patient then challenged him, saying, like, oh yeah, what are you going to do?
Oh.
So that night, the doctor goes and gets the most painful injection he could give, quote, without being harmful to the patient, of course. End quote.
How do you find a harmful drug that's not harmful to the patient?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he said, quote, I talked him into getting down in the bed. I didn't use any abuse on him at all and gave him this injection and he really hit the ceiling over it. End quote. And then he gave like this involuntary smirk as if he couldn't as if he was proud when he did. Yeah, like
he's re-picturing it and he's like, yeah, I really got one over on that guy. It's like,
oh great, you're a grown-ass adult with full mental capacity, but you're gonna bully this fucking other person?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Authority trip.
Yeah, no fucking kidding.
Bill Baldini discovered the cost of caring for animals in the top 5 zoos in the country, and it averaged to about $7.15 per day, which is roughly $54 today, but that the patients at the institution were only allotted $5.90 per day, which is about $46. But that 80% of that money was given to administrative costs.
Yeah, quote-unquote administrative costs.
Mm-hmm. He concluded this evaluation with the thought that America's animals were worth more than America's children.
Clearly.
Yeah. He talked to the higher-ups of the institution and asked what would it cost to get Pennhurst up to what it needs to be to provide adequate care and therapy for these patients. It was suggested that they'd need about 700 more staff than they currently have, and it would cost about $4 million to pay them.
Yeah, it was probably pretty similar with Trans-Allegheny, honestly. At least.
Yeah. It was also discovered that many of the buildings in the complex were in disrepair that created poor living conditions for the patients. Outbreaks of infections and diseases were common.
Yep.
If they were inspected at any point after they were opened, they would definitely be closed.
Oh, yeah.
Bathroom facilities didn't have basic necessities like towels, toilet paper, and soap. And it was said that it would cost $1 to $1.5 million to repair these buildings.
Oh, my God.
Patients would often go for more than 5 days without a bath. They were forced to wear the same dirty clothes for days on end, even if they've soiled themselves. There were over 900 female patients, but there wasn't a gynecologist on staff.
Oh.
There were 11 teachers, but none of them were certified in special ed. There were really good programs at the institution, and those that were lucky enough to go through them actually succeeded and had better outcomes. However, only 7% of the patients at Pennhurst were enrolled in these programs.
Oh, go figure.
Yep.
Who knew? Who knew that teaching would actually help things? Huh.
Yep.
What a concept.
So only about 200 of the 3,000 patients got the help they needed. The rest were just handled in inhumane ways due to low staffing. Going to Pennhurst, you were supposed to receive the best medical treatment and therapy, but on average, the patients only got about 3 minutes of therapy per year. At its peak residency, Pennhurst housed 3,500 people at one time.
Great.
Punishments for misbehaving or acting out range from being strapped to beds, put in straitjackets, injected with psychotropic drugs, or having food withheld.
Yep.
If you were too unruly, patients were given shock therapy, sterilization, or were lobotomized.
Yep, sounds about right.
In 1974, a class action lawsuit was filed involving a patient named Terry Halderman, along with other patients who suffered abuse at the hands of Pennhurst. Terry was 12 years old when she was admitted to Pennhurst. She was there for 11 years, and in that time, she suffered multiple injuries from broken fingers, fractured toes, numerous lacerations, cuts, scratches, bites, and even suffered a fractured jaw.
Oh, God.
And she also lost teeth.
Ugh.
It was even said that she lost basic functions like speech. Prior to being admitted, she would say words like dada, mama, and nana, but later she was no longer able to speak at all.
Oh.
The environment was so loud with hundreds of patients screeching, screaming, and banging that it was hard for anyone to hear themselves think, and like Terry, many just lost the will to speak at all. A punishment for a patient who bit others would be to fully take out their teeth, and anesthetic wasn't used. They would just pull your teeth out. So there were a lot of patients with no teeth at all.
Yeah.
Another punishment was isolation. Once an 18-year-old spent 6 days in isolation for assaulting another patient. One female resident was physically restrained because she had a tendency to be violent and self-destructive to the point that she even blinded herself. But due to the staff shortages, she wasn't able to properly be cared for. And it was just easier to tie her up.
Right.
So in June of 1976, it was found that she had been restrained for 651 hours. In August, 720 hours. In September, 674 hours. And October, 647 hours.
Jesus.
Keep in mind there's roughly 720 to 744 hours in a month. So over the course of these months, she was restrained between 647 to 720 hours.
Right. So she'd get maybe 10 hours max on certain months.
Yeah.
Which is like a work day.
Yeah. of not being restrained.
Right.
So patients would abuse other patients both physically and sexually. One patient bit off 3/4 of another patient's earlobe while that patient was asleep. One patient killed another by violently pushing the patient to the ground. Female patients would end up pregnant and the babies were either given up for adoption, kept at Pennhurst as permanent residents, or they were aborted.
Mm-hmm.
One patient ended up with multiple STDs by being sexually abused from other patients. And this patient was a child while they were in Pennhurst. Mm-hmm.
Gross.
Patients weren't the only ones that were in danger. Very often staff would be threatened. In a documentary on Amazon, a staff worker said she was in the kitchen one day and a patient came up behind her with a knife threatening to kill her. She was able to talk him out of it, but the other staff members grabbed him, put him in a straitjacket, and chained him to a bed.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of patients that ended up at Pennhurst that shouldn't have been there at all. Some patients at Pennhurst weren't mentally disabled at all, but only physically disabled.
Mm-hmm.
There were patients with cerebral palsy who weren't able to walk, but were left to just rot on their bed since no staff members were able to help them walk around.
Yeah.
It must have been torture for these patients to be mentally active, but unable to move.
Yeah.
Kids who were just misbehaved often ended up at Pennhurst since the state had nowhere else to put them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this didn't fend well for the mentally disabled people, and there was a lot of bullying and physical abuse between them.
Oh.
There was one patient whose sister was jealous of her, so she set her on fire.
Oh my
and then
God.
She was put in Pennhurst because her burns made her scary to look at, and her parents didn't know what to do with her.
Oh.
But otherwise, there was nothing wrong with her.
Right.
Just because she looked funny, they stuck her in Pennhurst.
And she only looked funny because her fucking sister was jealous of her.
Mm-hmm.
Rude.
Another patient ended up at Pennhurst because his parents put him in there after he only suffered one seizure.
Oh my God.
And said poon instead of spoon.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Parents weren't allowed in the wards themselves. When they came to visit, the patient was bathed and clothed, and they were brought to a designated meeting area, often the nice garden area out front.
Of course.
So they had no idea what was happening behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
All they would see is that their child had a bandage or some injury that was explained away. One patient's family said anytime they would visit him, he'd have a new injury from a laceration, a broken wrist, to a black eye. And again, just excuses as to why they had these.
They're like, oh, kids will be kids.
Most often it was they did it to themselves. They fell or they hit something.
Yeah, they were playing and they fell off the monkey bars.
You know
or whatever.
how clumsy they are.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, kids.
Mm-hmm.
I roll.
So as a result of the expose from Bill Baldini, Pennhurst was given $16 million from the federal government to repair itself.
Oh.
They did eventually get better, and patients were provided with basic necessities like toilet paper and better nutrition.
Okay.
In 1975, the Developmental Disabilities Act passed in Congress, which established a system for protection and advocacy organizations in each state for the people with developmental disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
In 1978, the conditions were much better than they were in 1968 at the time of the expose, and they were certified and qualified for federal money to function. However, with the class action lawsuit and the new law being passed, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ultimately ruled that Pennhurst violated state, federal, and constitutional laws and ordered Pennhurst to shut down.
Well, probably for the best.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it sucks that like they were given all this funding and stuff like, all right, cool. And then they did start getting better instead of just pocketing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, yeah, no, you've done too much bad. We're done.
Yeah, because of the class action lawsuit that was filed.
Which for the patients is probably for the best, but...
Mm-hmm. Patients started to leave Pennhurst in groups and sent to smaller group homes where they would have proper care, attention, and programs to help them thrive in society. Their lives blossomed and they were able to function way better than they ever could at Pennhurst.
Oh, wow. How go figure.
Mm-hmm. Right. On December 9th, 1987, Pennhurst closed its doors for good. 10,000 souls passed through Pennhurst throughout its nearly 80 years of service. However, most of the people didn't make it out alive. Since then, the state has gone back and forth on what to do with the property. Parts of the property were repurposed for veterans and the National Guard. Plans were proposed to turn it into a township park. In 2008, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. In 2010, the Pennhurst Haunted Asylum attraction opened as a Halloween haunted house attraction like Universal Studios does with Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah.
Much to the dismay of many, people believed it was disrespectful to the people with disabilities that are still very much alive and who escaped the madhouse that was Pennhurst, but still every Halloween it's open.
Yeah, I think Trans-Allegheny does something similar and they have like a monster bash ball and stuff like that. Yeah.
Advocates for those with disabilities believe that Pennhurst should be memorialized and not made into a Halloween attraction, which, fair.
Yeah, I can agree with the Halloween attraction thing, but being allowed to like ghost hunt in these places is kind of nice.
Yeah. But with that said, let's talk about some ghost hunting that's been done at Pennhurst. All right, so let's start with Ghost Adventures.
All right.
In Season 3, Episode 1, Nick, Aaron, and Zach take on the monstrous task of investigating multiple buildings along the Pennhurst campus, as well as the underground tunnels that connect them. Zach interviewed a girl who had visited Pennhurst with some friends. She said they were in the infirmary, and she caught an EVP on camera of a disembodied voice violently throwing up, and they played this, and it sounded like in the background.
Gross.
Yeah. As Zach was doing his walkthrough interview, he and Nick heard a loud bang inside of a building, and they go inside to investigate, and they see a desk toppled over, and there were fresh tracks made in the dust underneath the desk legs.
Oh, wow.
So they assume this is what made that noise. They continue to do their tour, and they're told that down in the tunnels, people constantly feel like they have a hand on their shoulder. They're told about the Quaker building, which apparently housed the most aggressive and difficult patients to handle. One girl said she was in that building, and she and her friends heard the giggle of a little girl. She asked the girl to do it again, and the little girl did. She and her friends went to investigate, but they couldn't find anyone else in the building. Then they go to the Franklin building, and the girl said she and her friends were sitting around a room, and she looked in the corner and saw a little girl sitting with her knees up to her chest. The little girl didn't say anything to her and just disappeared. And for the rest of the time the group was in the building, they all felt terrible, depressed, and felt like they had no energy, and they also said that they felt like they were thrown down a flight of stairs.
Oh, okay. How you know that feeling is beyond me, but all right.
A property manager said he was at Pennhurst in the middle of the day with a contractor and the contractor's 21-year-old son. They were outside a building, and the son pointed and said there was someone in the window of the building. The other two men looked up and saw the same thing. It looked as if someone was grasping the curtains and holding them open to peer down at them. All three of them go into the building to investigate and found no one. And all the doors are sealed, and there was no way anyone else could have been in the building. And when Zach went up to the building to the same room that they claimed that they saw the apparition in the window, they noticed a heavy screen actually blocking their curtains, so no one could have possibly been holding them open.
Right.
So the three men said that they had no idea that that screen was even there, because all they did was just like walk through the building and peer into the rooms and see if there's anybody there.
Yeah.
But they had no idea that there was just this screen. It's like a screen that's plastered over the windows, so people can't get in or out.
Yeah.
And there's no way you could have touched the curtains.
Yeah.
So it's just weird. Later during the investigation, Zach, Nick, and Aaron are in the Mayflower building, which is said to be one of the most active buildings on the campus. They were doing an EVP session while Zach had the EMF detector out. The detector spikes, so Nick asks if the spirit liked being there. Then they get an EVP that said, "Go away."
Yeah, my guess would be no.
Yeah, Nick, why would you ask that?
Yeah.
Clearly not.
My assumption would be no. Right off the bat.
Then all three of them heard a little girl's voice, and they all turned around at once. Then they get an EVP that said, "Hello," and "What are you doing?"
Aw.
Yeah, the little girl was just like, "What's up?"
Hi.
While they walked around the building, they started hearing other footsteps that weren't their own, so they stopped in the middle of the hallway to listen, and they can hear the crunching as if someone is walking on debris. And then they get very clear EVP that says, "Get out."
Oh. See, that's all I would need to hear, and I'd be like, okay, bye.
Then I'd want to hang out with a little girl, because she seems cute.
I mean, she does seem cute, but like clearly somebody's there hoarding her. I don't want to say protecting, because I doubt that's the case.
Yeah. So they hear random banging as if someone's opening and shutting doors. They even capture these noises on their Static X camera they set up, and they knew they weren't in the building at the time. Also, on another X camera, they capture the sound of a woman screaming. It's all very clear. Like,
see,
it's really creepy.
I wish mine had been clearer than it was, but at least Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, it was just not the case.
That sucks.
Yeah. They were both also on Daily Motion. I don't know how much of that affected it, because it does seem like shit quality.
Yeah.
But anyway.
At one point, when they're in another hallway hearing the same banging noises, they get an EVP of a man saying "sweet" after hearing a female voice.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew. Fuck right
That's
off.
Gross. They go to investigate the building where they found the toppled over desk, and Zach gets an EVP that says, "Help me," after he announces that they only want to know if someone was there, and that they weren't there to harm them, they were just there to help them.
Aww.
So then they get the EVP that says, "Help me."
Aww. I feel bad for all these spirits. Most of them. I'm sure there's plenty that
are shit.
Can fucking rot in hell. Yeah. But.
Yeah. While the three of the guys were standing in the hallway, you hear the sound of a rock hitting the wall, and the debris that comes off hits Zach, which he calls shrapnel.
Of course he
It
did.
was
So
literally a
dramatic.
pebble that hit the wall, and like the dust like hit him in his elbow.
Oh, shrapnel in his
That's what
nipple.
he said.
I know, he's such a baby. So dramatic.
But if you see all three of them, clearly no one threw the rock, so
Right.
it seemed like someone threw the rock at them.
Yeah.
And later they caught an EVP of hissing.
See? That's what I mean. When somebody says get out, you get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Unless you're
Not
prepared to
if
do
you're
something
Zach.
about it. And
Mhm.
I mean, I guess Zach would be prepared to do something about it, but I sure shit am not.
So they go into Quaker Hall, and Zach had some spirit box type device. So he wore glasses that showed the word that was spoken. So it's
Interesting.
different than like holding the box.
They always have such interesting technology that you never see again.
Yeah, and then it acted like a spirit box. Like it had like the frequency noise and stuff, but you see the word show up on like the glasses you're wearing.
Right.
So it was really weird, and I'd never seen them before. Like you said, like they
Yeah.
just come up with random devices, and it's just like, huh.
And then you
interesting.
literally never see it again. Like, they're like, yeah, there's this
Yeah.
new device that was made just for us, but we're never going to bring it back.
Yeah, because then they just stick to the tried and true, like EMF detector, digital recorder, spirit box, and like that's it.
That's helpful.
As they were walking around, he asked what was done to the people in Pennhurst, and the spirit box said hit.
Oh, okay.
As they were walking down a hallway, all of a sudden, a random coat rack comes falling down towards Zach, hitting him in the chest.
Oh, so they hit him.
Yeah, and so when they look back at the video, the coat rack wasn't anywhere near them. It was on
Mhm.
the other side of the hallway.
Yeah.
So they think a spirit picked it up and dropped it on top of him. And Zach yelled, "Who did that?" And they get an EVP that said, "The girl did."
So it's probably that little girl you think is so sweet. She's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm going to fuck you up.
Well, maybe Zach deserved it.
The girl did it. Or it's somebody who's like, oh, it wasn't me.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
It was clearly the little girl in the corner.
So that's it for Ghost Adventures. Now let's see what Taps is up to.
Sweet.
So in Ghost Hunters Season 7, Episode 2, the team heads to Pennhurst and are debriefed by the owner of the property. He says there are reports of a glowing apparition of a young girl. Doors open and close on their own. Random banging is heard. A woman in a white dress is seen both in the buildings and in the tunnel. You can hear piano playing and dragging foot sounds. And he says some people have reported seeing apparitions of men's torsos. Not even the whole fucking body.
Gross.
Just half torsos. And he also said that in the
Gross.
Mayflower building, people have reported hearing Get Out, which corroborates with what Zach heard.
Right.
So they go to Quaker Hall, and the owner says that someone reported having a crowbar thrown at them.
Oh.
Other people have said that they've seen people peering out the windows, but when they go to look, no one's there.
Ew.
In the Devon building, this is where children were normally housed. They hear doors slamming, whispers, and someone heard a voice saying no teeth when they were in the bathroom. Which makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I forgot
Yeah.
about the girl who lost her teeth. Oh, that's not funny.
Most patients ended up losing their teeth. Like when I was watching the documentaries and they were interviewing previous patients, a lot of them had no teeth.
Oh, yeah. That's not
Yeah.
funny.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I laughed.
After the debriefing, they get into the investigation. Jay and Grant start off in the tunnels, and they heard loud banging sounds as soon as they entered.
Ooh.
Grant had an EMF detector, and it started spiking in a spot, so they decided to try an EVP session. Grant asked where will they go after they leave Pennhurst, and they get an EVP saying Spring City, which, as I mentioned before, is where Pennhurst actually is.
Right.
So it's almost as if the person is saying they just go out and wander around the city after they're free.
I'm not going to heaven. I'm just going to go haunt everyone else.
Yeah. So next, Steve and Tango go to Quaker Hall, and they kept hearing random footsteps, even though the two of them were standing still.
Mm-hmm.
Then they heard a really loud metallic bang, and when they went to investigate what it could be, they find that it's a large metal window frame that couldn't have possibly moved on its own, and there's no wind going through because all the windows are sealed up.
Right.
After that, Amy and Adam go to the Mayflower building, and while they're conducting an EVP session, they kept hearing doors slamming, footsteps down the hall, and the sound of something dragging across the floor. Later, Amy and Adam go to the tunnels, and they use a laser grid and aim it down the hallway to see if any movement or activity blocked the lights.
Mm-hmm. Does that show up as like a yellow light, or like are you supposed to be able to see it?
The laser grid?
Yeah.
So it's like the Xbox Kinect, where it's just like all the green little laser points. You can see like a wave going through. Like if somebody walked through it, you would see like a wave. You would see the lights moving because they're bouncing off of the object.
Okay, so that is how it was supposed to work. That's what I thought. So they had that 3D grid in Portals to Hell.
Okay.
And when they were reviewing evidence, they had like this weird anomaly where like a yellow light just kind of shows up perfectly in the center between some grids.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a line of light, but it's like goes perfectly down the center of all these lines, and then it just disappears.
That's weird.
Yeah. So I was like, is that how that's supposed to happen?
No, that's weird. Yeah, it's just supposed to like if you were to walk through it, you would see just like a wave of light moving because like the different light beams are like moving past.
Right. That's kind of what I figured, is it was supposed to like see movement.
Yeah. So that's weird.
Yeah.
Whatever that was. So they set up the laser grid and aim it down the hallway to see if any movement or activity is detected. And then they saw something blurring out the lights on the laser grid. So they go down the hallway to check it out. And at the end of the hallway is a locked door. So there's nobody fucking down there.
Right.
So they knock on the door and pretend that they're trapped, asking to be let out.
Okay.
And then they catch a random male voice groaning into their digital recorder.
Would you do that? Knock
Pretend.
on the locked door? Yeah, and be like, help.
No.
No. This is why we're only ever going to be amateur ghost investigators.
Yeah, we're not going to be professional. We don't even do professional in phasmophobia. Come on.
Yeah.
They continue to walk around the tunnels, and Adam hears what he thinks is a cow mooing. So they go up to the surface and find that part of the tunnel that they're in really is close to a dairy farm that borders Pennhurst, and they conclude that perhaps some of the noises people might hear in the tunnels are actually coming from the farm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not boo, but moo.
Yeah. Well, so people might think they're hearing moaning, and then it's just a cow up top.
Yeah, the cow's lowing.
Yeah, so they debunk that.
Ah.
Then Jay and Grant are in the Devon building, and they kept hearing random voices banging and shuffling around the floor.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, Jay sees a shadow figure dart down the hallway, and when he tries to chase it, he loses it.
Oh.
Then they hear random moaning noises, and then after that, Grant sees the same shadow figure do the same movement that Jay saw, but again, they couldn't find where it went.
Again, they chased it, and again, it didn't.
Yeah, so it was interesting because they both saw the same thing. Like Grant was explaining it to Jay, and she's like, yeah, that's exactly what I saw. So they saw it at different moments.
Right, but doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, whatever this entity is like, fuck you guys. And it's just like zoom, zoom,
bye.
So when they reveal the evidence to the owner, they reveal a lot of this evidence that we've already seen during the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But one really creepy one was that Jay and Grant were walking around a building, and the camera catches a random EVP of a little girl giggling, and it's super clear, but they don't react in real time.
Yeah.
So they didn't hear it, but it's on the recorder, and you just hear this little girl, like, they're going, It's fucking weird. So that's it for Ghost Hunters. So next is Haunted History.
Ooh.
So Haunted History Season 1, Episode 4, paranormal investigators reveal what they caught during their investigations. They showed EVPs saying, I'll kill you.
Oh.
Untie me. And the voice of a little kid saying, don't leave me.
Oh.
That one was really sad because it sounds like, don't leave me. Like, it sounds desperate.
Yeah.
In the Devon building, one investigator had said hello, and he heard a little girl say hello back.
Oh.
He asked how old she was, and she said 7. And these EVPs are super clear. Like,
right.
It literally sounds like a little girl responding.
Yeah.
Another investigator was in the basement of the Quaker building and actually caught on camera a crowbar being thrown at them. So this corroborates with what we heard in Ghost Adventures.
Right. Holy shit.
So the owner is telling Zach that somebody got a crowbar thrown at them. And then in this episode, you see that crowbar. Like, it legit is thrown next to him. And he's just like, oh, fuck. That's funny. But
all these shows are so funny.
Yeah. People have supposedly been scratched, had things thrown at them, and also heard curse words being said to them. In the basement of the Devon building, one paranormal investigator said he was there with a group of friends, and it was about 5:30 a.m., so daylight was approaching, and the light was slowly coming through the windows.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, everything went dark as if a dark cloud had filled the room, and then all 4 women in the group started screaming that something touched them.
Ew.
But the men claimed they didn't feel anything.
That sounds about right for the rapey patients.
Mm-hmm. So he said that there were about 6 people in the group, and like the 4 girls all screamed at the same time saying something touched them, and then the guys are just like, yeah, I didn't feel anything. And finally, in the haunting of a show with a psychic medium named Kim Russo, who takes celebrities back to the places where they've had paranormal encounters, In this episode, she takes Beverly Mitchell back to Pennhurst, and Beverly Mitchell, if you don't know, is an actress and is probably best known for being one of the daughters on Seventh Heaven. So she first went to Pennhurst when she was scouting locations for a film about ghost hunters she was producing and starring in.
Interesting.
Yeah. She said when she was there, she had real physical symptoms like nausea and migraines, and she said she also felt serious dread and a deep depression. When she was in the Mayflower building, she was taking pictures, and all of a sudden her camera started wonking out and just shut off altogether. And in the admin building, she said she went into the holding room where patients would wait until they were properly evaluated and placed in the right dormitory. And when she entered, she got a splitting migraine and she felt very nauseated. Later, when Kim, the psychic medium, goes into this room with her, she tells her that in this room, she got a vision of patients waiting for sometimes weeks at a time and would bang their heads on the walls wanting to get out. So she said this room had a very high energy and that the spirits were literally bouncing around the room. So according to Kim, she has no background or history of this place. She's just telling Beverly what she sees.
Yeah, interesting.
Which I guess take it with a grain of salt. I mean...
Yeah, it's not as impressive as Blind.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
if you can genuinely believe that she's somehow never been exposed to anything that's gone on there, maybe.
So they go into the Mayflower building, and Kim said she's getting the sense of a little girl, either named Emma or Emily, and that she had an older brother named George, who both passed away in the hospital. George apparently had passed on through the light, which is why he was able to come and talk to Kim, but the girl apparently was still earthbound because she still had some unfinished business or justice to achieve before she could finally pass on.
Okay.
So this could be the little girl that keeps, like, messing with everybody else.
Throwing coat racks at Zach.
Yeah, because in every single thing that I've talked about so far, there's been a little girl ghost.
Yeah, there's supposedly one at Trans-Allegheny as well, but nobody really got anything. Her name is Lily. She was 9 years old, and she died, I think, of illness, influenza maybe.
Yeah, it's just weird, because Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Haunted History, all three of them talked about a little girl ghost. And now Kim is saying that there is one.
Yeah, in the Ghost Adventures episode, they said they heard a little girl, but I didn't.
Yeah. So then Beverly said that this was incredibly eerie because in that same exact room for her movie, they filmed a little girl ghost running around it, but she had no previous knowledge of this little girl that would haunt this room.
Interesting.
It was just written to the movie that in this room there's a little girl ghost, but in real life there's actually a little girl ghost.
Yeah, it's like it spoke to her.
So in the beginning of the episode, before Kim even meets up with Beverly, she walks around the campus grounds by herself to just kind of get a feeling of the area. And so she walked down this random road and got a strange sensation of a large animal rushing past her.
Okay.
Like as if it was a horse or something. And she even said to the camera that she knows it's bizarre because why would a horse be running around the grounds? Later, when she's walking down this same road with Beverly told her before Kim said anything that when she was here, she felt like she was almost run off the road by a large rush of wind.
Oh, interesting.
And also seemed like a large animal was rushing past her. Apparently, it was later discovered that horses were often used as part of a therapy program at Pennhurst, so maybe it really was the residual energy of a horse that galloped by.
All right.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Strange.
In the Quaker building, Beverly tells Kim when she was in this building previously, she felt a very aggressive energy towards her and that she felt like the spirits didn't want her there. Kim said that the patients, particularly women, were brought there and sexually abused. Kim even suggested that this was where the doctors would perform abortions on the patients who were raped. Again, Beverly finds this an odd coincidence because in her film, in this very room, they shot a scene where a crazed doctor attacked with the ghost hunters.
Oh.
Yeah. I feel like I need to watch this movie.
I wonder what this movie was.
In another room, Kim tells Beverly that she sees someone in the corner and they're asking the two women what they're doing. She then sees a group of men in the corner just staring at them confused.
Ew. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Kim tells them that they aren't going to harm them because she got the sense that whenever a staff member would enter the room, they would only be there to cause harm and that only bad things were going to happen. So she promises them that they're not going to cross over the threshold since she got the feeling that this group of men spirits were very apprehensive of their presence. So she asked the cameraman to just film the corner of the room because sometimes the camera can capture something the naked eye can't see. And the producer in the background says they can't see what she's pointing at. And then a lighting guy straight up just crosses the threshold. And the producer tells Kim to show her what they want her to film. And then Kim just says she's not crossing the threshold because she promised them she wouldn't.
Yeah.
And said, quote, otherwise I'm going to have to change the rules and they're not going to like that.
Yeah.
End quote. And then as the lighting guy points the lights in the corner, she says the group of men start to get really irritated and angry and that she said the light is killing them.
Oh, weird.
So then they leave this room and then they conclude the episode with Beverly talking to Kim before they leave. So, yeah. That's all for the paranormal shows.
Interesting.
Pennhurst State School and Hospital.
Right, of course, because it's not an asylum.
It's not an asylum. They claim it's not.
Clearly. It's clearly not an asylum. Alrighty, let's head on back through the portal, back to our home city. Alright, just a quick head... Are
we missing someone?
Yeah, I don't think Trevor made it back through.
Oh, well, I guess he's just going to be stuck at Pennhurst with everybody over there.
Murmur will find you, I'm sure.
Once he comes back from wherever he is.
Oh, right, if he ever returns from his whatever kind of sabbatical he might be on. Anyway, moving on. If you enjoyed your tour today, please leave us a review on wherever you booked your tour. Reviews help us grow and reach listeners so we can provide you with more tours. Remember to visit our website, nopevillepodcast.com, where you will have access to our show notes and anything we referenced in today's tour. And you'll be able to find and follow us on all our social media for updates, polls, events, or just interacting with us, which is NopevilleCast on Twitter and Nopeville Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to be part of our campfire stories, which are stories you submit for us to read, either fiction or nonfiction, you can submit them through the Contact Us form on our website and select Campfire Stories. Or you can send us an email at nopevillepodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to write campfire stories in your subject line so we know what you're emailing us about. No tour is complete without first stopping by the gift shop before you leave. Go ahead and click on the gift shop on our website and be sure to pick up a souvenir for yourself and a loved one. And last but not least, gratuity isn't required but sure is appreciated. Visit our Patreon to see how you can support us and get some awesome rewards in return.
Yay!
And we will catch you all in the next tour.
Bye!
Bye!
Excellent. I see most of you returned, and relatively unscathed. Bravo. I hope you enjoyed your visit to Nopeville, and look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks again for listening to Scary Time by Indie Drop-In Network. If you would like to nominate a scary or paranormal podcast to be featured, just send me a tweet at Indie Drop-In. I'd also love to hear if one of our featured podcasts is now your favorite show. Indie Drop-In survives off ad revenue and listener donations. If you would like to contribute, please consider buying me a coffee. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Indie Drop-In. If you look at the very bottom of the episode description, you will see a link to make it easy. Indie Drop-In also has many other shows you might like. Just go to indiedropin.com. See you next week.